April 10th, 1993, in Moscow, Russia. The Berlin Wall has fallen, the Soviet Union has collapsed, and Russia's wild 90s are underway as every two-bit street thug scrambles for cash and control. Oligarchs in waiting are taking over entire industries and using bullets instead of board meetings to do so. As the empire falls, the chaos and anarchy rise at alarming rates. Former KGB men and Afghanistan war vets ply their trade, and by trade I mean killing people for money. Moscow is a gangster's playground, as thousands of gangs and organized crime groups have sprung up out of nowhere. The streets are feral. And it's not just guys in tracksuits with thick necks and shaved heads taking out other guys in tracksuits with shaved heads and thick necks. You've got businessmen, politicians, and mob bosses themselves being picked off by, Day the Jackal types. We are talking tens of billions of dollars at stake here, up for grabs. And nowhere is more deadly than Moscow. In 1992, there are 2,500 murders in Moscow alone, with that number closing in on 3,000 over the next few years. Moscow in the 90s is a war zone. There's a lot of action, and everyone wants a piece of that action. Problem is, sometimes two people want a piece of that same action. In Moscow in 1993, they don't go to the courts. They go to the hired killers. On this April night, Valery Dlugach, also known as Globus, is leaving a nightclub with his girlfriend. He's a rumor thief in law, the highest level of Russian gangster, born in the trenches of the gulags. Only something a few hundred people can claim at this point in time. A rare breed. Not what you would call a soft target. He's with his girlfriend and bodyguards as he exits the club. But alas, it's not enough to keep you safe in Russia those days. A single sniper shot hits him. Some reports say in the chest, others say right in the head. Dead, just like that. One of Moscow's top gangsters. One of his associates leaves the club seconds later, another mafioso, and he's killed too. It doesn't stop there. Only a few days later, one of Globus's business associates, who goes by Rambo, is gunned down in his own stairwell. Fingers point to one man orchestrating the whole thing, Sergei Sylvester Timofeyev, a soldier and tractor driver turned karate instructor who formed an organized crime group with some of his trainees that went from scrappy car thieves to billionaire players with control everywhere in less than a decade. Rumors fly about motivations. Drug trafficking competition, control of a certain nightclub, Globus partnering up with Sylvester's sworn enemies, a bunch of Azeri crime groups. But one thing people are sure of is who pulled the trigger to take out Globus and a whole host of other mob bosses. Alexander Solonik, also called Alexander the Great and Sasha the Macedonian, because he liked to fire two pistols at the same time, one in each hand, which is apparently called the Macedonian way. Within a few years, he'll have another nickname, the Superkiller. This is the Underworld Podcast. Welcome back to the Underworld Podcast, where every week we dive into the world of international organized crime, hitman, drug trafficking, scams, flim-flams, all sorts of shenanigans from all over, past, present, and future. And who are we? That would be me, Danny Gold, and my co-host, Sean Williams. And we have traveled the world writing and making docs about these topics. And now, every week, bring you, our dear listeners, stories to help you make it through the week and maybe provide a little entertainment. As always, bonus episodes at patreon.com/underworldpodcast for the low price of $5 a month, or you can sign up on Spotify or iTunes, underworldpod.com for merch, t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, and whatnot. The Underworld Podcast at gmail.com for any tips or monetary offers. Support our sponsors. Shout out to Magic Mind and everyone else. Follow us on social media, where we have grown increasingly lazy at posting stuff, but maybe we should hire someone to, make 1-minute videos for TikToks. I don't know. What do you say, Williams?
Yeah, I mean, you want to go through and pick one of the random guys, the tens of thousands of Bangladeshi fellas reaching out on the Facebook page. I mean, yeah, fair play to them. The real rise and grind isn't some Miami day trader with his head in a bucket of cold water. It's a self-taught graphic designer in Dhaka. Yeah,
those guys get after it, man. Enough, respect to them. I mean, I'll never ever use them, but they email every day. Good for them.
Hello, the Underworld Podcast.
Yeah. Now, is there anyone more vaunted in the world of organized crime, or at least organized crime stories, both fact and fiction, than the Russian mob hitman? I think maybe the Godfather, the Sicilian mafia boss, but I'd say the Russian mob hitman is either tied with him or like a close second. I mean, if we're talking lore, like he has to be up there. And this guy, the Superkiller, he has a hell of a lot of lore and is the quintessential Russian hitman. And it's not just, American podcasters looking for a salacious episode title to catch your attention. In Russia, this guy is the subject of at least 2 movies, 9 TV series, 3 books, and countless documentaries. He's become a symbol, if not the symbol, of Russia and Moscow's murderous mafia war 90s. Though I would kind of argue that like the oligarchs, right? They might be more so than him.
Yeah, we've done a bunch of shows on this kind of world, and it's crazy, man. It's so bloodthirsty. You sometimes wonder how they managed to go down the Putin route, this kind of like Stalinist thing that he's reviving, and then you read literally anything about Russia in the 1990s, and then you're like, okay, yeah, I get it. That was mad.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't expect it to have been utopian right after everything. A state like that collapses, and we've seen it in other countries too. When a state like that collapses, Albania, right? We talked about that. When a state has, been under a regime like that for decades and generations, like it's going to be chaos right afterwards because there's no real structure to take over. But
yeah,
enough of that. Yeah, there's not a lot of English language stuff on this guy. You have your usual 10-minute Wikipedia ripoffs and like quick Lad Mag style internet BuzzFeed articles. Pravda has a big piece on him, and I pieced together some other reports from Russian sources, but I want to give a shout out to this guy, Dan Cummings, who has a podcast called Timesuck, who actually did a phenomenal job. I think he had the only book on Amazon about this guy translated, which is like self-published and terrible, I think he says. So definitely respect to him. I owe him a huge debt for this episode, and also, most of these storytelling podcasts are super boring and not funny. I typically can't even bother to listen to them, but this guy's he's entertaining and he's pretty funny, man. So enough respect to him.
You're giving a big shout out to someone who seems to be stealing our entire USP at this point. No, so maybe we should. I think he was doing it before us, dude. Damn.
But not the same subjects. Not the same subjects. But yeah. But maybe the same time period. I don't know. But good man. Anyway, besides that, I joined a bunch of our other Russian Mafia episodes we've already done, from the Brooklyn-Brighton Beach Wars, which is one of our first and incredible stuff of the 1990s, Sean's great Toylati Russian mob war story, which is an amazing 90s Russian mob story that you probably can't hear anywhere else, the NHL extortion episode, and of course, the one on my one-time Shabbat dinner companion, the legendary Boris Nayfield. Boris, wherever you are now, I think you might be in Russia. Let's hang out soon. I've got a list of people leaving angry comments on our podcast that I would like to give you. So let's set the scene, right? This guy gets his criminal career started in the 80s, but the 90s is really when things went up. Now, the term Russian mafia, it's not really a mafia, right? Or one group. It's just a generic term for Russian organized crime groups. And in the 90s, these groups exploded with the end of communism's police state and Russia becoming a free-for-all. By 1994, Russia's interior minister said that there were close to 5,500 organized crime groups / gangs in the country, up from about 1,000 a decade earlier. By 1996, there's 8,000 such groups, and most of them have between 50 to 100 members. Now, Russia always had some level of organized crime. We've talked about it before. The thieves-in-law, the old-school Russian gangsters. I think, how do you pronounce it, Sean? Vory Zakon?
Vory Zakoni. Yeah.
Look at you doing that little accent. As they're,
Born Slav.
They're called that. They've existed for generations. I mean, they exist before even the establishment of the Soviet Union, and they started up in prison during the Tsar days. So they were professional criminals who lived by a code that was way more brutal and serious than like La Cosa Nostra, right? They basically weren't allowed to function in normal society. They swore to have nothing to do with the normal world. They had their own laws and customs. They're also supposed to be the judges of the Russian underworld, and they command respect from everyone. They're not every Russian gangster, right? They're not a common thing, by the way. There are very few left. I think even in the 90s, there was only a few hundred or so. But of course, during communism, these guys have to keep a relatively low profile. There's also, black markets and tons of corrupt officials and military leaders and all that. But the government then obviously is the real mafia. And then the 80s, Yeltsin gets his mind blown by a walk through a Wegmans, and communism starts to collapse. And there's a sense of lawlessness basically pervading Russia. Money is draining out of the economy. Society is breaking down. It's the perfect time to rise up. And then, of course, we have David Hasselhoff and The Winds of Change, which still one of the top 10 songs ever, even though Patrick Rading Keefe, who's a friend of the show, tried to ruin it and failed. But yeah, the USSR collapses in 1991. And all of a sudden, you have a pool of young men with some hardened skills looking for work and not afraid to do crime. Obviously, ex-KGB and ex-law enforcement guys, but also a lot of veterans of the war in Afghanistan who had all sorts of violent skills and all sorts of mental issues. And the country was essentially a free-for-all, with money pouring in, money pouring out, lots of guns from the old Soviet armories, all that Soviet hardware built for when the Cold War was supposed to turn hot and didn't. It's all out there on the market. And no control, pretty much, almost a complete vacuum of power, really kind of building a state from the ground up.
Yeah, I feel this is what's going to happen when AI takes over all the journalist jobs, and we're going to have mobs of, I don't know, Beltway, Ivy League grads just stalking the streets of San Francisco looking for copywriting gigs at startups.
Yeah, but I think you could take them, dude. You know? What
Yeah,
are they gonna do?
I think what physically? I mean, yeah,
Physically.
I'd be up for it.
Get that concealed
Are we
carry.
saying? Are we saying that
Anyway.
if Russia had just sorted out its mental health issues after the Afghan war, then they wouldn't have had any crime?
Oh God, no. I'm just saying it was
No.
like a thing to throw in. A lot of those guys had like insane PTSD and did a lot of violent
Yeah.
things and came
Fighting
back
the
and were ready to
Mujahideen.
get. Yeah.
Not easy.
That's when you get the emergence of a lot of the criminal gangs that are going to start small time and end up very, very big time. And when I say small time, I mean like extorting street vendors and running women and stealing cars. And when I say big time, I mean like literal billionaires. Things go haywire as all of them fight for the rackets. Bodies start getting dropped. Sean has this fantastic episode on the Toylati Wars, which, what was that about again? Was it car plants or some metal factory?
Yeah, it's their national car maker at the time. Was it Avtovaz or Autovaz or something, like ethnic Tatar assassins, bomb blasts, the lot, man. It was like insane. Fun story. Bloomberg was actually going to send me out there to do a story on it, and then those pesky Russians went and invaded Ukraine. So I never got to do it. So you know who the real victim of that war is, Danny. It is.
Yeah.
It is me.
It's you.
Yeah.
As the great Sean Williams once said, quote, at one point in the fall of 1994, an average 3 contract killings are carried out in Toylati per day. Gunfire rattles around the streets and civilians get caught in the crossfire or blown up in car bombs. The two battling gangs are hiring muscle and hitman from outside town. It's like Burning Man for Russian gangsters. A pun,
All right, man.
if you will.
There we go.
Yeah.
Still got it.
But yeah, I'm going to quote you in these episodes, dude, from previous episodes. I think it works. You know? Yeah, so the Russian oligarchs, they fought brutal gang wars to take over these big industries too. One I'd love to eventually do an episode on is the aluminum wars, where a number of oligarchs or very powerful and connected guys tried to gain control of Russia's multi-billion-dollar aluminum industry. There were multiple wars fought over it. The first big one in the mid-90s, they were being sold for a pittance and privatized, and these are big players, like famous names, guys who own sports franchises now. Roman Abramovich, Oleg Deripaska, who I just learned is only 57, which is insane.
Jeez.
That means he was doing all that stuff when he was like 25. Yeah, hundreds of people killed in these wars and lots of contract killers getting lots of work. From a website called European CEO, quote, in the words of Roman Abramovich, who testified recently in his suit over events of that period, every 3 days, someone was being murdered. Roman, if you're out there, we love a sponsorship. Please do holler at us. Does he
Actually,
still
if you
own
get
Chelsea,
through to
or
him,
what does he own?
No, he had to divest out of Chelsea because of the war. But I don't know, man. If you get through to him, mention that I helped run all the electrical wiring through Stamford Bridge in one of the shittest jobs I ever did, because I was getting bullied by the big men and the big boys on the construction site. But yeah,
Aw.
basically, Roman, you owe me. So
Well, look at you now, huh?
Look where I am.
Yeah, look at you
Come
now.
on.
You should bully them. You got a microphone in front of you, dude. Name names.
Damn.
Get after it, dude.
Yeah.
But yes, bodies are being dropped all over. Someone needs to do these killings, or at least do them well. Well, at least, the big ones, not the tracksuit ones. You can't send any Tom, Dick, and Gopnik out to do the big business ones. And as the gangsters and oligarchs merge into one sort of hybrid, dealing with these business problems is basically killing the guy you had the problem with. And that becomes a super popular way of basically solving business negotiations. In the 90s, once that I saw said there were 10,000 shooting deaths some years across the country, 600 estimated contract killings, though I've seen numbers up to like 1,500 per year during that point, some for as little as $1,000. There were 95 bankers killed, hotel bosses, restaurateurs, sports figures, businessmen, politicians, journalists, Afghan war veterans. At one point, even a prominent American businessman traveling in Moscow In 1996, a guy by the name of Paul Tatum was straight up machine gunned in the streets.
Yeah, I just looked that guy up. It's wild. He's like 39 years old, Oklahoman, got in a dispute for the ownership of this, I think it's like the Radisson now on the banks of the Moscow River. He cut his rival's phone lines. And how's this for hubris, right? Quote, there's no telling how quickly this country could develop and how much it could look like the United States in a very short period of time. I don't know. Maybe he just meant like 50s and 60s Vegas, but that is some pretty bold speak shortly before.
That was him saying it?
That was him saying that, yeah.
How do you end up? I mean, that's like Oklahoma cowboy stuff, man. Just like, I'm going to go to Moscow in the 90s.
Yeah.
And didn't work out too well.
There must have been loads of media about that, right? They're like, everyone getting excited about McDonald's and Burger King and stuff there.
Yeah. Things did not go.
But don't do that.
Go well. With all this happening, the Russian contract killer or hitman becomes a big sort of cultural fascination in the 90s, not even just in Russia, all over the world. And it continues to be one to this day. And the face of these big time hits, the one you call when you need one done, is none other than our friend and your friend, Alexander Solonik. All right, so, the thing about journalists and especially documentary producers and podcasters is that, I mean, I'm sure Sean can tell you as well, you kind of lie, right? I mean, not lie, but like embellish and be incredibly hyperbolic. And you do this with like headlines meant to catch the eye, or even pitches to editors who then will change the headlines themselves. And you want people to pay attention. And what I mean by that is that like you attach superlatives, right? Like biggest ever, most dangerous, most murderous, most powerful, that sort of stuff. Like we do it all the time for these episodes, especially on YouTube. We just throw caution to the wind. Every story we've done has been about the most brutal gang of all time. But it's also, journalists, NGOs, politicians, activists, and it gets more insane, like I said, on YouTube, podcasters, and the sort of BuzzFeedy websites that make up the glut of like the internet now. So you have this guy, right, who you see stuff like this about the Superkiller, the most dangerous and successful Russian hitman ever, and I'm initially extremely skeptical. And you should be too, for sure. In all these things, with gangster and crime lore, we've always kind of talked about that. And there's a lot of this here in this guy's story, like beating up 12 people at one time in prison. But it certainly does seem like he is pretty much for real. Like, he might not be the most prolific Russian mob hitman ever, but he definitely killed a whole lot of people, confessed to a bunch of them, though sometimes, as we'll see, people kind of do that to gain themselves some notoriety, and there's some theories he did that as well. But in some cases, he actually walked police through how he did it. So I think my verdict is, and Sean, we'll get yours at the end, is somewhat legit, maybe even mostly legit. But there is a whole bunch of competing facts and stories that we'll dive into. We do know that Alexander Solonik is born in 1960 in Kurgan, in the southwest of Russia, close to Kazakhstan. Middle of nowhere. His father is a house painter, his mother is a gymnastics teacher, and he's a smart kid who plays sports and does well in school. He's not setting cats on fire. He's not getting kicked out of school for sexually assaulting the janitor or anything like that. He seems normal, not at all like a young Sean Williams terrorizing the other kids at, I don't know, Miss Derbyshire's finishing house for exquisite gentlemen, or whatever the hell British schools are called.
Oh, she was married, so you can call her Mrs. Derbyshire.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But he gets very into martial arts, boxing, judo, all that. Gets a judo black belt at 16, a karate one at 18. And he does gymnastics with his mom, which, honestly, gymnastics is like really good super assassin training. I have a friend who grew up doing gymnastics. Dude, he's the most ripped person I know, and he doesn't even work out anymore. Just like, force your son to do gymnastics, Sean. He will thank you later, especially when he can do a backflip.
I'm on it. I'm on it.
Yeah, it'll be cool.
Yeah.
He also gets into wrestling too, which is, gigantic in the Soviet Union, and obviously still is in those areas, especially in like, Dagestan and Chechnya and all over Russia too. And coincidentally, a lot of the early iteration of Russian street gangs and mafia groups formed out of like wrestling gyms in the groups there. In 1979, around the time he's 18, Solonik enters the Soviet army and serves in a tank division in East Germany. That's according to one source. He trains with guns there and is apparently a really good marksman. His lieutenant is quoted as saying he was incredible and was such a good shooter that he started training other soldiers. Now, Pravda, the Russian publication, and this is the only source I found this in, says they're unsure if he actually served in the army and instead maybe served in the CID, which is the Central Intelligence Department in East Germany with Soviet troops. There, these CID guys were allegedly trained in how to assassinate high-up officials of NATO countries. Some reports also say he served in a sports division where he was an excellent wrestler. According to his lawyer, quote, "My client served in Germany, but not in the Central Intelligence Department, as people think now. There was a group of special intelligence officers trained near the territory of the military unit in which Alexander Solonik served. He would watch those training programs for a lot of the time. He even became obsessed with the idea of becoming a Superman. He found something romantic about it. So when he served in the army, he made up his mind to become a cop. So it kind of sounds like he's saying he didn't serve in that special intel assassin unit. He just kind of gazed at them longingly as they trained near him and got real big into like male action hero daydreams. I mean, you know, it kind of does sort of fit from what we'll eventually learn.
Yeah, I've never heard of a guy who joined the Red Army in a tank division, but always wanted to be a real hard man, like a cop. That sounds, I don't know, that sounds legit. I suppose Russian cop, which, yeah, if the guys I ran into in 2016 are anything to go by, not the friendliest and quite large men. So yeah, maybe it does check out.
They do not have that reputation. But his term in the military for whatever he was doing, it's soon up. So once he gets demobilized and leaves the military, he decides he wants to be a cop, specifically in the Oman unit or internal affairs. These guys are no joke. They are originally formed in 1979 to make sure there are no terrorist attacks during the Moscow Olympics, and they are elite. It's 1983 when Solonik joins. He gets great training there. They're sort of like a SWAT team, and he gets all these psychology classes, academic stuff, some nice sorts of Soviet indoctrination. He's eventually sent to get sniper training, but brawls with some officers, apparently repeatedly. He gets into a number of fights in a few months and gets tossed after only 6 months in Copland for being too violent. According to his superiors, he was not psychologically all there and lacked compassion. Sort of like a young Sean Williams. So
Thank you. Yeah,
he returns home to Kurgan, not sure what to do, a man at a crossroads, not unlike, again, a young Sean Williams or me right now and for the last decade. Business owners, quick question. When someone hears your phone number, does it stand out or does it just sound like a bunch of numbers, a bunch of, just some jumble that no one's going to remember? Let's fix that with Ring Boost, the go-to service for custom phone numbers that make your business stand out. Whether you're running a small business or scaling something big, the right number makes it ridiculously easy for customers to remember you and actually call. You can get a local number to connect with a regional audience. You can also get a number like 1-800-HOME CARE or 833-ROOFERS. There's plenty of options for every industry. If you're a plumber and your number ends in like 4957, no one's going to remember that. But if your number ends in 888-LEAK, somebody is going to remember that and they're going to call. Here's the best part, super affordable, super easy, and it can help drive more calls to your business, more trust. So if you're ready to sound like the business people want to call, head over to ringboost.com and use promo code Underworld for an exclusive discount. That's ringboost.com, promo code Underworld, Ringboost, because voice matters. According to TimeSuck, he gets a job as an undertaker, but most reports I've seen have him as a gravedigger. Let me repeat that. When the soon-to-be Superkiller Russian Mafia hitman leaves the army and gets kicked out of the elite police squad for being too violent, he goes back to his hometown and gets a job as a gravedigger. I mean, like I said, this dude definitely existed and killed people, but some of this stuff just sounds completely made up. Like it's too good to be true.
Yeah, Gravedigger is a bit of a red flag, right? Because on one hand, it fits this supervillain vibe that you might do if you were going to write a story about him. But on the other hand, I don't know, man. Everyone who knows a small town gravedigger knows it's the guy who flunked out of school and was smoking weed and playing Call of Duty all night. So I'm not really sure that one fits, really.
Do you know a lot of small town gravediggers?
I know nobody else, actually. That's my entire circle of friends. My football team is called the Gravediggers, and that's all they are, yeah.
Is that true?
Dirty Tackles.
That they're called the Gravediggers?
No, it's not.
That'd be a good name.
That would be pretty cool.
That'd be a good name for like a rec league of people over 35 playing football for sure, dude.
I'm still playing with the young guys. I'm not doing over 35s. I won't have that kind of slander.
Oh, my bad, dude. I've seen Sean sends photos. He sends photos every week of his like football field hijinks, like portfolio model shots to me and Dale, our audio producer, in the group chat, literally every week, and we're proud of him. He looks good on the field. I'm not gonna lie to you. Please keep sending those photos, dude.
I'm gonna send you one right now, and you can react to it on the show. Because look at the state of this.
God, the people who are complaining about the banter are not gonna like this episode.
This is me. This is me playing on Sunday. Look at that face.
Oh wow, dude! Can you hold this up to your camera just so like the people at home can see it?
Yeah, hold on.
I don't know if you want that out in the public.
I got papped looking pretty pathetic.
Oh yeah, they can see that. Oh yeah, you kind of look like you're doing a dance.
That's bad,
you should pretend you were doing a dance after you scored.
Wow, man, it wasn't a good performance. Anyway, moving on.
Solonik at this point, he's now training MMA accordingly, is what they say. Though I don't think MMA was a thing in the 80s, right? Like, it's kind of weird to
I
say
think it was
that.
just starting.
I don't even know if it was like called MMA in the 80s. But either way, he was doing some sort of fighting for sure. He's making inroads with some of the local hooligans, primarily those in a gang that would later be called the Oligarchskaya Organized Crime Group. This is the mid-'80s, and they must have been small time then, but by the late 80s and into the 90s, they're going to become massive. And I've seen other reports too that he was with the Kurgan, like basically called the Kurgan Organized Crime Group for that city that he was in, or that Kurgan was like the affiliates of Oligarchskaya, who I think are based in Moscow in Kurgan. So I don't know. It's very confusing. They're formed.
That's how it works, right? They had like satellite groups in different towns and sort of Soviet republics or whatever.
So they're formed by a bunch of guys from the same gym. So that story does check out. Led by a mob boss by the name of Sergei Timofeyev, who is also known as Sylvester because he's jacked and looks like Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, good. I like that nickname. It's been a while since we had a good one.
I feel like they should just go with Stallone. Isn't that a better nickname than Sylvester?
Maybe it's Stallone. It doesn't sound. Maybe it's like Russian for idiot or something.
Solonik is going to end up putting in a lot of work for him and his big gang. But like I said, according to a Russian source, it's his coworkers at the cemetery who get him involved in organized crime, as they eventually form up a Kurgan-based gang. And the Kurgan-based gang, like I said, might be a local affiliate or top ally. Who really knows? Certainly not anyone who wrote about this guy. Either way, the gang he's rolling with is involved in the usual, which is prostitution, extortion, blackmail, kidnapping businessmen for ransom. This is, of course, in the mid-'80s, so it's not wild cowboy Russia just yet. Solonik is approaching a new career as a goon, just serving as a local enforcer, collecting payments, that sort of thing. He also meets his wife around the same time and gets married, but he's said to be living a spare sort of minimalist life, but he does own a ton of guns and goes target shooting a lot. So now we get into more of like this, is it real or kind of nonsense? And according to the book, Time Sucks Sourced, which the guy says is just terribly written and sounds like one of those self-published Amazon books. In the mid-'80s, Solonik already killed 7 or so people just through his enforcer work. People who didn't pay debts, things like that. But in 1985, he gets his first contract killing, a guy by the name of Vladimir Solstin, a mob boss from the city of Kursk, who was beefing with Sasha's boss, Sasha the Macedonian, that's Solonik, over the prostitution racket. Vladimir was not paying some agreed-upon tax, and Solonik's boss said he had to go, and he would pay him $250,000 to do it, $200 on delivery, and $50K up front. And the way to do it was when Vladimir visits his favorite dentist in Moscow that he sees every few months. Solonik finds out when he has an appointment. He gets there 2 weeks early to scope out the place. Vladimir is a mob boss, remember? He's not like just a dude wandering around. He's traveling with bodyguards and an armored car, not some guy you can just kind of walk up to and take out on the street. Solonik makes an appointment with the dentist himself. He goes to the office, gets a little teeth cleaning, scopes everything out. He is a professional. He also asks out the receptionist, and they go on a date, and she's going to become his mistress and then his second wife later on, which again, just movie type shit, Solonik decides he's going to take out the mob boss when he's in the dentist chair with a sniper rifle from a nearby building where he locates a storage closet. He really plots it out. This is not a guy who would IG his crimes. And the day comes, and it works perfectly, and he fires a single shot into the mob boss's dome, and when he's in the dentist chair and splits his head open, a perfect hit.
Yeah, this is starting to read like an actual movie script now.
Yeah.
I guess, except that in the movie script, he would need some sort of inner turmoil, emotional density, and he sounds just like a stone cold nutcase killer.
I mean, we don't know. Maybe he was going through a lot,
Yeah.
Or maybe he was
mental health
maybe he was a
awareness again.
sociopath. Maybe he was setting cats on fire and they just didn't figure it out. So that's when he allegedly gets the nickname Superkiller. Lots of allegedly here. Now he returns to Kurgan and gets his second assignment, another mob boss known as Miroslav, the Terror of the Balkans, which is a sick nickname.
Good.
Similar situation, he's encroaching on the territory and business of Solonik's bosses and had been warned. Other hitmen have tried to take him out before and it hasn't gone well for them, meaning they got taken out instead. Solonik gets offered $750,000 to take out Miroslav and 3 of his bodyguards that he always travels with.
Yeah, so this is US dollars?
That's what they say. And again, the price seems so inflated to me. I mean, they are taking out mob bosses, but that's a lot of money, especially because this is supposed to be the mid-'80s in Russia, right? It kind of doesn't make sense. How much would 750,000 rubles be?
That's probably like a tenner. So it's got to be. It must be US dollars, right? Because
that's what they say,
last
dude.
time I went to Russia, it was like 50 to the dollar, maybe. So it can't be. And maybe it's that low. Actually,
we are talking like mid-'80s though. So I don't even know what the ruble was to the dollar back then.
A few grand. Yeah, I don't know.
It does sound far-fetched, not least because of those prices. And yeah, it just seems $1 million seems incredibly high, but maybe it was 1 million rubles. There's no way really to tell. This hit, again, is going to take place in Moscow at a nightclub. Solonik returns to Moscow, takes his receptionist mistress out on some dates, including to the nightclub where he's planning to do the hit so he can get some recon in. He plots it out, aware that Miroslav is going to be playing poker with some buds there in a few days. And again, he comes in, cold as ice, smooth as, I don't know, what's smooth, silk, and takes out Miroslav and his 3 guys like it's nothing, and escapes out the door, leaves Moscow and returns to Kurgan, where he is now balling out of control. Now, that is one version. But according to Russian media, he doesn't commit his first big murder of a mob boss until 1990, so I'm not sure if I buy these initial stories. I'm also under the impression that there weren't many wild contract killings there in the mid-'80s, at least without massive repercussions, but I could be wrong about that. What is agreed upon by all sources is that in 1987, he gets arrested for rape that he claims was consensual, which, that's problematic, Sean. He's handcuffed and put in a cell, and according to one source, it's 3 counts, but he's found only guilty of 1, or 1 count and found guilty. Either way, he's supposed to be locked up for 8 years, but somehow manages to escape out of a window and goes on the run.
Yeah, I'm probably going to be cutting that bit from the movie script, to be honest.
Yeah, it gets a little messy. He gets out, allegedly, with the help of some gangster buddies acting as getaway drivers, ends up in Siberia, back and forth to Kurgan, gets divorced, remarries his dental receptionist wife, and continues to do gangster things. At one point, still a fugitive, he decides to get some cosmetic surgery done to become less identifiable, gets a mole removed and gets a tattoo removed as well, and he gets busted at the cosmetic surgery center, which again, that's a movie thing that's happening, right? Is it real? I don't know. Yeah. Does it sound real? It sounds too goddamn good to be real. So, 1988, he's locked up again, and here we get a real Van Damme type of story. Prisoners locked up with him find out he's a cop or was a cop, even though it's just for 6 months, and he gets attacked by 12 guys at once, who he manages to, despite taking some hits, fight off with the use of a shovel, taking a bunch of them out. Did I mention he's only supposed to be 5'6" too?
No.
After that, he is. After that, he's left alone and spends the next few years basically lifting weights and plotting his escape, probably reading The Art of War or Zen in the Motorcycle Club or some human psychology mastermind book shit. He's a model prisoner, though, and within a year or two gets special privilege to work in one of the less restricted areas. Sean, do you have any idea what's going to happen next? I bet you don't. You adult.
I don't. Do you know why? Because my neighbor just rocked up in her kitchen opposite me, completely naked. So I'm going to try and keep my eyes off of that and
is that real?
Focus on. Yeah. She's standing there right now. I don't know why she's doing it. Maybe it's some kind of veiled message. Not veiled.
A lot of digressions. This episode. Does your wife listen to the podcast?
No, she does not. No.
Anyway,
but I'll just make sure I let her know that I'm not looking now. Oh, she's gone. Thank Christ for that.
So once again, he is what were we talking about? He is able to escape. He crawls out through a vent or sewer system, just real Shawshank style, in the April of 1990. Now, according to the book from Timesuck, his gangster buddies had paid off a guard, and now he needed to do a job for the same gang he had been working with to pay off the debt. And now we're entering the street warfare area where things just get a little nutty. According to his own testimony, his first big mafia hit happened shortly after he was released from prison in July of 1990 in the city of Tyumen. He shoots and kills the leader of the Ishim criminal group, a guy by the name of Nikolai Prinkrinich. That's according to the main Russian sources.
Prinkrinich.
To the main Russian sources when he first gets known as a contract killer of mob bosses specifically. Another source says he killed a mafia boss named Dunya at the time. I'm assuming it's the same person. He walks up to Dunya when he's eating at a mafia hangout spot. They know each other. He holds out his hand like he's going to greet him, and then he dumps his entire clip into the guy, killing him instantly.
So it sounds like complete anarchy, right? These are sort of hundreds, if not thousands, of small groups, focused mostly in a city or a territory or something, and they're just always trying to muscle in on other gangsters. Is it kind of like that?
Yeah. I think Moscow dictated a lot of the rules, so it always seems like things are concentrated in Moscow and dictated out to these smaller cities. But yeah, I mean, these guys are named guys. Apparently, some of them are known quantities. Just Moscow in the 90s, dude, or Russia in the 90s. It really was
nuts.
I thought, it was that wild. Anyway, after that, it is off to the races. Mob bosses, big money. He kills at least 4 other prominent mafiosos over the next few years. The first is known as Kalina. Solonik kills him when he's in his yard, snipes him from hundreds of yards away with a Dragunov. Kalina was no small fry. He was a thief-in-law, highly respected, feared. Solonik eventually confessed to this killing. Then comes the cold open, the killing of Globus, Valery Dlugac in December of 1993, and there's a lot of stuff floating around here about why this happened. Globus is a big deal, a thief-in-law himself, a boss. One weird, deep Russian source laid it out that, and these are all translated, by the way, by like Google, so who knows? Globus was getting involved in drug trafficking to add to his portfolio of stolen cars, gambling, and prostitution. He was buddy-buddy, but also clashing with an infamous and powerful thief-in-law who operated in America for a period of time, Yaponchik, who we've talked about. Yaponchik was friends and partners with 2 men who have both been said to have been Solonik's bosses, one guy named Petrov, who led a group from Kurgan, and Sylvester, who we talked about. They, with Yaponchik, set up the murder of Globus over business disputes involving a stolen car ring and drugs.
Yeah, tell us a bit more about Yaponchik, because you covered him way back, right, when we started doing the show. Like he's like one of the real big dogs in post-communist Russia, right? And he's called Yaponchik because he looks a bit Japanese, I think.
He looked a bit Japanese. There was a famous Odessan gangster called Yaponchik in like the 1920s and 1930s during Odessa's heyday. But this guy was like in the 90s. I believe he served time. He got out. He was sent to America for one of 2 reasons. There's one that says he was sent there to organize all the Russian mafiosos and basically be like the ruler in terms of like passing judgment. Another just says he was sent there because too many people in Russia wanted to kill him. But he was in I think he interacted with Boris. He was in America for a time and was eventually, I think, sniped or killed some people in Russia and went to prison and then sniped and killed as well. I don't remember the exact details, but yeah, he was a major player.
So this world that the Superkiller's playing in is like top
mob bosses, man. They don't call him the Superkiller because he was killing, any old gopnik on the streets. He was taking out the big boys or getting orders from the big boys. The other story says it was on the orders of Sylvester, who, like we said, led the Orchkovskaya group we talked about. He was beefing with an organized crime group led by Globus because Globus was partnering up with outsider groups from the Caucasus, specifically an Azeri crime group who were mortal enemies of Sylvester. And that war saw upwards of 100 people killed, so Sylvester decided Globus had to die. Solonik takes out Globus at 3 a.m. outside the nightclub with a sniper rifle, then kills one of his friends, another named mafioso, seconds later. Then a few days later, he takes out another partner of theirs, alias Rambo, in his stairwell. And months later, he also takes out one of Globus's deputies who went by Boban. Another story has Solonik taking out Globus with an RPG when him and his associates used vans to box him and his bodyguards in while they were on the road. Then killing Globus's replacement in the nightclub, and then a compound raid to kill another guy. Who knows at this point? Interestingly, Sylvester, who ordered these hits, and like I said earlier, started off as a tractor driver before becoming a big-time player, got so big, he would end up in a beef with notorious mega oligarch Boris Berezovsky. He tried to take out Boris with a car bomb, only to have his own Mercedes blown up a few months later, which is how it gets down in Russia, man.
The unwritten rule of rap.
You've heard of Boris, though, no?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, he's huge.
Mm-hmm. Billionaire. Solonik, who by then earned the nickname Sasha the Macedonian because he would shoot with a gun in each hand, which is apparently the Macedonian way of doing things. I don't know. Also was nicknamed Alexander the Great. Also took out a Siberian crew led by a mafia boss named Mammoth who owed a bank a massive debt. Solonik goes to Siberia to try to convince him to pay it, unsuccessfully, and they all start dropping like flies shortly after. That's how business goes in Russia in the 90s. You need not get caught up in those overdraft fees, boy.
I mean, now we got Klarna getting us in debt over buying like Chipotle, so I don't know what's worse.
I want Chipotle right now. I'm gonna get Chipotle after this.
I want it at all times.
Dude, it's so good. Is there Chipotle in New Zealand?
No. We're not that good.
We should get sponsored by Chipotle. So Solonik is running around taking out mafia bosses. He's a known quantity. He's wanted, all this stuff. Probably should be laying low, but I assume at that time in Moscow, every gangster basically thinks the police did not care at all or were at the very least powerless to do anything if they did. But some of them actually do care, it seems, as Solonik finds out when he's walking in a market in Moscow with a buddy. The police stop them for an ID check, which Solonik refuses. It's unclear if they know who he is. The police tell the two to come with them to the station, and Solonik and his buddy, they comply. They don't cause a racket or anything. Solonik or his buddy, one of them, has a gun hidden under a raincoat he's holding. When they get to the station, the police, for whatever reason, they don't search them. I assume if they knew that he was the super killer and they had him in custody, they probably would have. Because the super killer, left to his own devices, he's going to kill. And he does. He takes out the gun promptly, shoots 3 cops and a security guard and runs out the door. Makes a big run for it. He's jumping over fences, all that. At one point, he's shot in the kidney and keeps going. He ends up going down, though, while his friend escapes. Some sources say he killed 4 cops total, others 5 cops and 2 security guards. But either way, he's caught, locked up, and has to have surgery right away to remove his kidney. This is in October of 1994. Solonik, after recovering from the shooting, is placed in an infamous Moscow prison, said to be very secure, aptly named Detention Center Number 1. He soon recovers from surgery to get the bullet out, and he starts working out and learning foreign languages.
Yeah, the Victor Boot way. Become a polyglot. Polyglots get ingots. Does that work? Some kind of phrase like that. Whatever.
Not really, but
really.
yeah. What's with these guys, man? With the languages, good for them though. I guess you have a lot of time. You might as well go for it. While in prison, he confesses to a bunch of the murders that we've discussed here, the big time mafioso hits. I think he ends up taking the rap for 20 murders or so. Some he walks the police through how he did it and the facts line up, but there are theories though that he confessed to a bunch he didn't do, either for notoriety or to protect other hitmen and his gang, since he was already going to go be locked up forever. And another theory that he was trying to avoid being transferred to a regular prison where he'd be in a or with a, accessible to a bunch of other mafia crews that he had pissed off by, killing their leaders. They're waiting to get him. And he thought by confessing to all these murders, he'd be put in some special FSB prison or something like that. I mean, that's what they say. Bottom line, though, he did kill a lot of people, some of whom were mob bosses. Writes a Russian publication, quote, "His confessions are difficult to cast doubt on, according to officers of the Moscow Department of Criminal Investigations. When he was taken to spots of crime, the hitman felt confident describing in detail the circumstances of each crime. On the other hand, there are skeptics who believe that Solonik, who is guaranteed capital punishment for having murdered police officers, is trying to delay the inevitable and is assuming others' sins." But anyway, while this is happening, he's recovering in prison, he studies, he works out, and then in summer of 1995, he becomes the first person ever to escape from Detention Center 1. Quote, "The official version says that some influential criminal group had their own man in its jail, Sergei Menshikov. He worked there as a guard. It was him who gave a rope, several hooks, and a gun to the Superkiller. Solonik hid some clothes under his blanket in order to make the guards think that he was sleeping. Menshikov took him to the roof of the jail where the walking grounds were. They got down on a rope and got into a BMW car that was waiting for them there." That's from Pravda, I believe. And shortly after, the guard is killed and his body is found in a river. He was paid $500K for what he did, according to reports.
Wow. Is there a worse job than 1990s Russian prison guard? That's not good.
Probably not. So now Solonik is on the run. He's being hunted by the Russian police, Interpol, and a lot of powerful Russian mobsters who all want him dead. Some of whom are working with corrupt police who also want him dead. There's a rumored $10 million bounty on his head. There's also rumors that other gangs paid off his gang to turn on him, and another that the Rambo hit wasn't sanctioned, or maybe it was the Mammoth hit wasn't sanctioned. That Solonik had tried to extort the guy without the proper permission, which is a big no-no. He ends up somehow in the suburbs of Athens where he rents a big mansion or a villa. I don't really know the difference between a villa and a mansion. We might not have the means to actually have to worry about it.
Well, I'll let you know after the record.
There's 2 rumors about Solonik having shady contacts with Greek intel. One involves him getting a fake passport at the Greek consulate in Moscow, and the other is that he was recruited by Greek counterintelligence to get information on Russian mobsters operating in Greece. Those come from 2 different sources, but I guess they kind of feed one into the other, no?
Yeah.
While in Athens, Solonik might have started his own organized crime group there that was heavy in drug trafficking and contract killings, though not too much is known about his time there. He's spotted at times in Cyprus and Italy and Spain, and surprisingly, he sometimes pops into Russia on the sly, which is where he meets Svetlana Kotova, a 21-year-old Miss Russia, 1996. And gentlemen, it pays to be that bad boy, because they instantly fall in love and she moves with him to Greece. But unfortunately, it does not pay to date the bad boy, because she is about to be murdered only a few weeks after she moves to Greece, and so is the Superkiller. Around that time, another hitman, a Superkiller himself, and a buddy of Solonik, a one-time buddy, by the name of Alexander Pustolavov, or Sasha Soldat, pops up in Athens. He's been hired to take out Solonik. He tracks him down to his villa and rings the doorbell to greet the guy like the old buddy that he is. Solonik, though, must not have been suspicious or let his guard down because Sasha Soldat promptly strangles him with a wire and then kills Svetlana.
Yeah, soldat is the German word for soldier, which is probably going to be the same in Russian. I bet, thinking about this, that Sasha Soldat is something that the Germans called the Russians, you know, like a bit like Tommy's or Fritz's or GI's or whatever. I bet it's that.
Yeah, G.I. Joe, same sort of thing. For sure. But just like that, the Superkiller has gotten super killed. Live by the Russian Mafia hit contract, die by the Russian Mafia contract. It's a tale as old as time. The next day, word gets out that the Superkiller has been murdered. A Greek newspaper reports that someone called the police and let them know where a body was hidden in a sack in the forest. They find it strangled, I think chopped up a bit and burned with acid. Svetlana's body isn't found till months later. There's another story floating around that Moscow police learned that another Russian mafioso had just met with Solonik in Athens, alerting them to his location. Remember, he killed a whole bunch of cops, so they obviously want revenge. The following day, a bunch of Moscow officers head to Athens under the radar, and shortly after, someone in Moscow alerts the Greek police to a package left for them, which contains a map to Solonik's body. I don't know if I buy this, because why wouldn't they just kill him for those 8 months he was locked up? But it seems easy enough for the Moscow police to kill a guy locked in prison, you know? Like, that just makes more sense. Either way, rumors soon spread that the body wasn't actually the Superkiller, that it had different fingerprints, that it didn't look like him. But he does not pop up again on anyone's radar. Sasha Soldat, though, the man who allegedly took him out, gets arrested in Greece years later, and in 2016 is sentenced to 24 years in prison for killing 6 people, among them Solonik and his girl, which seems like kind of no laws, dude. Like, 6... And I just read that he was actually released in 2023, so he served like 8 years for murdering 6... We should get him on the show, for murdering 6 people. But just a few years ago, 2022, Greek media report, quote, "The man authorities believe masterminded the murder of Russian hitman Alexander Solonik and his girlfriend in Athens in 1997 has been arrested at Thessaloniki's International Airport," is reported Tuesday. The suspect is a 48-year-old Greek national from Georgia with a pending arrest warrant in connection with the murders. He was stopped by Greek police at the airport on Monday afternoon after flying from Cyprus. But a few days later, typical Greek fashion, they say they have the wrong guy and it was just someone with the same name and birthday and dad's name, which, like, what? But yeah, that's all we know, and that's the magical, whimsical life of a Russian mafia superkiller.
Jeez, yeah. I think we're going to need some listeners to get in touch at this point, because that, I don't know. I feel like some Russian-speaking listeners could get on the weird forums and like websites and teach us a bit more about this guy. Also, how many guys with the same Georgian surname are going to be swilling around in northern Greece? That's an interesting final bit.
Some powerful organized crime groups, though. So, I mean, that adds up. But who knows, man? Who knows? But yeah, guys.
That was crazy.
Patreon.com/Underworld Podcast. Sign up on Spotify, sign up on iTunes. You can even just support us for $3 a month. And the Underworld Podcast at gmail.com. So holler at us, you know, let us know how it goes. Send us sunglasses if you can. It's just, it's what we're doing now. I guess that's it, right?
That's it.